game doesn't need a massive open world or endless customization to feel alive. Sometimes all it takes is a small team, a focused vision, and the confidence to do less, but do it better. Eriksholm: The Stolen Dream is one of those rare games that doesn't chase trends. It knows what it is, and more importantly, it knows what it wants the player to feel, moment to moment, step by step. I wanted to explore this game not just as a player, but as a developer, looking for lessons I could carry forward in my own work. Whether it's the way the game handles narrative, how it introduces its mechanics, or how it builds tension with rhythm and silence, there's something about Eriksholm that felt intentional in every frame. The premise and the aesthetic put me in a poetic mood, so I'll try to describe the story without spoiling anything, but with a mystique flair. Eriksholm takes place in a stylized European city at the dawn of industrialization. You play as a young girl, caught in the quiet aftermath of a personal loss. From that moment on, the story unfolds in intimate, deliberate steps. Every moment is shaped by what the characters choose not to say, by how they move, and by the atmosphere that surrounds them. Characters emerge slowly, as people shaped by the world around them. Their motivations feel grounded and their struggles personal. While it's a narrative game, the dialogues don't feel forced. In fact, you feel eager to listen to what they have to say, even NPCs. Aside from dialogue, it lets its world speak in rusted fences, cracked pavements, foggy alleyways, and the sound of a guard's boots echoing in the distance. What's most impressive is how the narrative stays grounded without losing its sense of momentum. The stakes rise through how each new detail adds tension and emotional weight. The game builds a sense of unease through its pacing, through stillness, through quiet confrontation. There's a sense that everything matters, even when nothing is said aloud. One of the first things Eriksholm gets right is how it teaches. There's very little hand-holding. At most, it tells you about the key for an action, and then off you go. There's no blinking checklist telling you what to do or a narrator explaining every action. Instead, you start in a place that feels like it belongs to your character, and you just begin. The mechanics reveal themselves gradually through situations where you need them. You notice a patrolling guard, and then you see a potential cover. You try to crouch, hide, and move without being seen. And when you fail, the game resets without punishment. It just provides a moment of learning, of clarity. That early sense of autonomy does more than teach controls. When the tutorial and the story are the same thing, there's no break in immersion. You're not stepping out of the world to learn how to play, you're learning by living in it. The lesson here is about respecting the player's intelligence. Eriksholm doesn't assume ignorance, and it builds trust by showing rather than telling. That's a valuable takeaway for any developer. If your environment is designed with intention, you don't need a wall of tutorials. Learning becomes part of the play, and more than that, it becomes part of the character arc. As the protagonist becomes more capable and daring, so do you, and it only works because the tutorial is embedded in the experience, not pasted on top. As you progress, the game evolves by layering small, meaningful changes. Each chapter introduces something new, but it never overwhelms. A new character may enter, a new ability may become available, but everything added feels organic to the world and the story and keeps everything fresh. A crucial decision to not make things feel repetitive. Instead of handing out new tools like upgrades, Eriksholm introduces mechanics as natural extensions of character identity. One character is more agile, another has access to higher ground. One might brute force through tight corners, while another uses silence and misdirection. Each chapter reshapes how you approach the same types of problems, and that constant reframing keeps the game engaging without ever resorting to spectacle. This is a masterclass in mechanical pacing. The game knows when to shift, when to rest, and when to introduce something new. And importantly, it does this without breaking its own internal logic. There's no moment where a character does something out of place just to justify a mechanic. Every ability fits the person using it, and every change in gameplay deepens the story rather than pulling focus from it. For developers, this is a reminder that progression doesn't always need to mean power creep. Sometimes it's enough to offer a different lens on the same world. New tools don't need to be stronger, they just need to be different in a meaningful way. That keeps the experience from going stale and invites the player to re-engage with familiar spaces through fresh logic. Eriksholm's levels are small by design, but dense with intent. They feel handcrafted, not procedurally arranged. These aren't just places to move through, but they're systems to understand. Every shadow, every walkway, every broken pipe is part of the logic of the space. There's no mini-map to guide you or dotted line showing the path, and the design is so tight that you rarely feel lost. You basically observe and adapt. Guards also behave consistently, and their patterns are readable. If you're paying attention, the solution is always there. You just have to find it. What this teaches is that strong level design isn't about size, it's about depth and density. It's about ensuring that every object, every patrol route, every escape path has a purpose, and the player feels rewarded for understanding it. This is a big deal when thinking about player agency, because when a space is designed like a system, when it has rules and patterns that can be learned, it invites creativity. That kind of constraint actually gives players room to think, because the boundaries are clear, it's focused, and that focus creates freedom differently, through intention. One of the boldest choices Eriksholm makes is to limit the player, on purpose. You don't get a second chance after being spotted, and there's no combat system to fall back on. If you mess up, you restart. At first, it can feel harsh, but it's about reinforcing intention. Every stealth game dances between freedom and friction. Eriksholm chooses friction, and that friction creates clarity in this specific case. You think before you act and need to plan routes and potential distractions, and when a plan works, it feels earned. But it also means the player is constantly engaged in cause and effect. You watch and wait, then you learn. And every time you're caught, you adjust. You change one thing and see if it makes a difference. It turns every stealth encounter into a kind of small puzzle. This is a design philosophy worth revisiting. In a time when many games build elaborate systems to protect the player from frustration, Eriksholm chooses to create value through friction. And that's not an easy sell. And it only works when your systems are tight enough to support it. When the player knows that failure isn't random, it just feels different. And because of that, success becomes satisfying, not just because you succeeded, but because you knew exactly why you succeeded. It's easy to assume Eriksholm was made by a big studio. The visual polish, expressive animation, lighting, all of it feels high-end. But it was built by a team of 16 people. They chose a scope they could handle and focused on fewer characters, smaller environments, and cleaner mechanics. And then they executed every one of those choices with care. Now, tools like Unreal Engine 5 and MetaHuman helped, but tools alone don't create tone. That comes from the team. And what makes it all so effective is that you can feel the intention behind every asset. Nothing feels generic. The buildings, textures, soundscapes, everything feels handcrafted. And of course, they are. There's a rhythm to the game that can only come from having the time and space to iterate so the project doesn't feel rushed. The real takeaway here is that quality scales with focus. A smaller team can create something truly remarkable if they commit to a narrow goal and polish every inch of it. I used to think progress meant adding more. Now I think it's more about staying focused on what actually matters to the experience. I've started realizing that Eriksholm formula for a good experience comes from what it avoids doing. No open world, side quests, crafting, upgrades, or loot systems just for the sake of filling time. It trims the fat at every step. Every system, line of dialogue, and environment serves the same purpose: to tell this story through this kind of gameplay. That level of discipline is rare, especially in indie teams, where ambition often stretches past capacity. But this game proves that choosing your battles and winning them is more effective than trying to fight on every front. It's a good reminder that sometimes saying no is the most powerful creative decision you can make. If a mechanic doesn't reinforce your theme, scrap it. If a feature pulls the player's attention away from what matters, cut it. Every minute spent chasing extra systems is a minute not spent refining what actually makes the game special. And Eriksholm is special because it understands exactly what it wants to be. That clarity cuts through everything. As a developer, I walked away from it inspired, and it's a reminder of how important pre-production is, to get things down from the start and focus with discipline on your vision. Of course, this lesson for me is probably related because I'm currently starting a new project and my game design document still has some unclear things, but I shouldn't start before every question is answered. This doesn't mean that you don't add things on the way, but they must be aligned with your vision. I was thinking of making a video on what proper pre-production looks like, so let me know in the comments if you would be interested. For anyone making games or just trying to understand what makes them tick, Eriksholm is more than worth your time. It's a gem. If you don't have time to play it, there's a full game walkthrough on my No Commentary channel. As always, thank you for watching, and if you want to join our growing Discord community, you are most welcome.